here we are. It's 2024. I can't believe it. We've been through so much over these past 4 years.
Of PLSMITHED, yeah.
Yeah. And here we are. We've got 2 kids upstairs.
Asleep, gratefully. I mean, our 2-month-old, almost 3, is sleeping through the night, which is a blessing for sure.
And, it's amazing. We put so much in, and I thought it would be really awesome if we could reflect on that and celebrate all the good and the bad.
And sharing with the people kind of just who we are and what we're about.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So, we're married.
Yes.
We,
for almost 5 years this year.
Yeah. And dating for 10 years. We just celebrated that. But we've known each other for almost 17 years.
I think it was, 2007 was when we met in high school.
High school art class.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. But we didn't get together until 2014. We were still in college.
Yeah, I mean, there was like 3 years that we kind of lost touch, and I went away to school, and you were back in the hometown, and we got back together on a break and reconnected, and we're like, "What have you been up to?"
It was fate.
Essentially, yeah.
And things were amazing. So I was like, "Hey, want to move in my apartment?"
Kinda.
The way we kind of got started making things was that way.
Yeah.
It was like, I need nightstands. And you're like...
Well, yeah, I was still finishing up my last year, not 2 years, a year and a half. And you were about graduating, and you were just on your own. I was just down in the college dorm. And when I would come home, I would come visit you at your apartment. And it was a lot of fun to kind of just see where we were at that point. Like, we've known each other for a long time, but at that point, I was into making. And when we met in high school, I didn't do any of that.
Which is crazy because you're super talented.
Well, a lot of it's just kind of self-taught, self-learned, and just figuring it out on my own. I feel like I am very intuitive, and kind of just the way my brain works as an engineer is like, this leads to this, and this is how you figure this out.
At that time, I was getting my master's in linguistics and teaching English, that my making art kind of like fell away for a little bit there.
Yeah, but I always encouraged that. I always thought you making art was very cool and part of who you were, who you are. Who you were, I say, because that's the person I met in high school. Like, you went to do these college level programs over the summer when you were like a sophomore and a junior. And I was like, that is cool because this person's an artist. I never thought of myself as an artist, honestly, until we were living on Long Island and, when we were dating. In high school, though, I liked art, and you kind of inspired me to like it because I knew you liked it. And I wanted to impress you in a lot of ways.
That's still so crazy. It blows my mind. And yeah, on that topic, like, let's segue into when we moved down to Long Island. And we, like, before we bought our house, we were renting, kind of like getting on our feet. You got your first job, which is how we got there. Like, I followed you down there to do you were doing engineering, and then I, got my job teaching art. And it was around that time that we moved into the first house where that's like when, I don't want to say Instagram, because Instagram was like, came out when we were in college.
Yeah.
At least my old self.
Yeah, same.
And then I that's when it was like coming out to be used as a platform for like, advertising yourself, your talents, and before like it became all business. And
I mean, if you took it that way, I remember when I started Instagram, it was just like posting pictures of my cats and like just random stuff.
But at that time, I was like, you know what? Like, I saw other people doing it to pursue and like posting their art. So I was doing that actively. And then in that community, when, you know, we just moved there and just trying to make friends, I was like, I saw other people doing it. And I was like, there's this whole like community of artists on Long Island that I was like, okay, like I got to get into this. So,
Do you feel like Instagram is a way that lets you find that? Or did you know that was out there and then use Instagram to look for it?
no, it was opposite. Like I saw other people doing it, and so that like got me more into, okay, maybe I can do it. Because like I said, I fell off the trail of art because I was like, oh, you know, I fell into this new passion. So I got back into it, and you know, I just actively started showing my work in galleries and like getting a lot of exposure that way, and like growing my following like as my separate thing.
Yeah.
And while you were, so let's talk about how in 2018.
Well, even before then, when we first moved to Long Island, like for me, I didn't have any background in making anything or working with tools because nobody ever showed me that. None of my family did that. And through YouTube and finding people, I kind of learned / like saw different techniques and kind of within that, and also the way my mind works as like an engineer, I can figure this out. So it was 2016 that we moved down there. We were renting a house, like just making it by, but we needed like a coffee table and a dining table. So that's when like I went and bought like some of our first tools from Harbor Freight, like just cheap stuff to make those things. And they were no good, but at the time I felt like they were good. I'm proud of it. Like,
Hey, our TV stand like turned into a fireplace
yeah,
at some
basically,
point.
yeah. And I remember we made the outdoor table that we ended up selling to somebody. It was like 12 feet long, but yeah, so we did that. But then 2018 is when we bought our house, and that was like the first actual like available dedicated space we could make.
It was perfect. It was like literally the greatest, I don't want to say like starter home, starter home for us. They
definitely.
had a garage for what later you didn't even know would be your building space, and then it had the little shed in the back for myself. And I remember that year was really exciting because I was, we were looking forward to, we set the date, we were getting married, and I was creating this series of paintings of the bouquets, and I had this art show coming up, and we had the idea, I don't remember how it came up, but that you would build the frame. So this was like so cool. Like every piece that was shown in that series had a frame. Yeah. And that kind of was cool because it got me out in the shop where I started, and this is when I was sanding, like I was finishing, you were building, I was picking out different stains that complemented the colors of the paintings, remember? Yeah. So that was like pretty cool because it was like, all right, like Luke Smith is being featured in that art show that I had. And it's kind of, you got, it was like a husband-wife duo thing before we were actually like a combo. Yes. Then we I'm going to say like our wedding was coming up. And before we took off to Europe, we took this little visit to something called Maker Camp.
Well, even before then, it was like when I started making the frames for your paintings, that was a way for us to work together and me to support what you were doing. Because I had no idea where I was going with anything. I was just like...
You were doing like the refurbishing and like...
Well, I didn't say refurbishing, but just like basic things that we would want for the house. Like just simple woodworking, getting wood from Home Depot and just...
Restoring old tools.
Yeah, I mean, I had the interest in that type of stuff, like tools, just in tools in general, and the tools that you would use to make different things. And you were doing these art shows, and I wanted to support you in doing that. And so it was just a kind of a natural flow into us working together on the stuff, because when we were down there on Long Island, like meeting people that had their small businesses that needed things, like you were the one that found them because they were looking for art mostly. And then it kind of was a side thing like, oh yeah, I kind of want this built for it too. And we're like, hey, Luke can do some of this woodworking stuff. Maybe we can do that. So that kind of was like us working parallel with each other, but also on like the same thing. So that kind of led to the building of PL Smith. I mean, PL Smith was your idea. And do you want to kind of explain like why you came up with that and why you thought that would be something that would be good for us as a couple?
Yeah, because first of all, my amazing, talented husband, I was like, is so cool, and I wanted to support everything you were doing, that I would always try and like come up with these big gesture gifts, whether it was like your birthday or a wedding or anniversary. So, you know, it would start with tools, but then it was like, okay, he likes this person on YouTube called Jimmy DeResta, and I saw like he holds classes. So I, for our anniversary in January, I remember like I bought the ticket and I like put it in the card and showed you, and I took the woodworking class, before our wedding. And then after that, it's kind of like that same thing. I was like listening to when you would talk about something called Maker Camp that was coming up. And so this is just, you know, we're still doing our separate things, but I was just constantly just keeping in mind, okay, I'm doing my thing, he's doing his, like he'd like something in that maker community space. And so
I didn't even know what the maker community was.
But you didn't even know what Maker Camp was. You were like, I don't even know what it was. It was literally at that point, I think, a Facebook event. Yeah. Because that's how I found it. You were like, here it is.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, I saw that Jimmy was sharing stories about it, and it was in the town that he lived in, which was like only 4 hours from us on Long Island. And it was, I mean, you got me the class there. So that's when I first went up there and saw kind of what it was. And I got experience doing some blacksmithing from Jimmy's shop assistant, but that experience doing that right before our wedding is kind of what got me introduced to this metalworking side of things, where I was just doing the woodworking things before. And yeah, when I told you I saw Maker Camp, they were talking about it, and like Jimmy had on his story like Austin. I was like, I don't even know who this person is. And they were talking about, I was like, oh, that'd be pretty cool to even go there and, you know, see him again because I went to the class, but also meet people that I heard that he would say were going and just didn't know what it was about until we went to it.
And when we went to it, like that was like one of our first experiences taking classes together, right? Because like when I was in college, I took like the welding, the jewelry, metalsmith, and all that stuff. And then it was our first time doing that kind of thing together, learning, just getting our hands on, basically, from the welding, the lathe, all that. Yeah, that was and so cool. It was awesome. It was like, it was really exciting. And so after that, so that was like the end of 2019, became. And to answer, you were saying before, like what led to that idea of that is after that experience, the experience of working with businesses on Long Island, just all these things that we were doing together but separately. I was like, you know, let's put this into, you know,
something together
in real life. Like, let's make this happen because we have it, it's there, we know it's a passion, you know. And so I was like, you know, I remember you being like, what? Okay, what would we even call it?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And so after some brainstorming, we came up with PLSMITHED, meaning like Smith, like having your last name, but the verb, you know, Smith, like made. Yeah. And at the beginning, when we came up with it, we were like, okay, so we came up with this business. Okay, what do we have to offer? And it was like not just the things that we make. There was 3 things. I remember because I put like all that time into the website, and Chris Zapp was like cheering us on. Yeah. And our 3 goals for our business were to teach, educate, so like inviting people into the space. helping other businesses grow with my background in, website development. And then the third thing was obviously the products that we made.
Yeah.
So, but then came 2020 and COVID, and it was like lockdown. And mind you, you and I are doing all these things that we love, making, painting, building, while also holding full-time jobs.
Yeah.
I'm a full-time art teacher, you're a full-time engineer, and with lockdown, fortunately, we were so lucky to be able to keep our jobs, working from home. And I remember the long days, because it would be like the morning, we'd like each open up our laptops, we're like working all day, taking those breaks when needed. But then it was cool because, we were kind of trapped like everybody else at home. But at the end of the day, when we were done with our work, we'd head out to the shop.
Yeah.
And we started these kind of exploratory projects.
Yeah. I mean, and kind of just backing up to Maker Camp, that's when you knew that I had some experience, like literally one-time experience metalworking, and you heard me talking over the summer about somebody that did metalworking because I started following accounts because I thought forging was really cool, and you worked out this deal getting an anvil for us. And I say us.
No, at that time, did we get the anvil before? Yeah.
We got it at Maker Camp.
So it was like
2019.
we held this anvil, and then we just
like it was like we don't have any metalworking equipment. We only have like a miter saw and a band saw and like just basic woodworking tools. But we have an anvil now. So it was like, all right, what are we gonna do with this?
Well, talking about this is cool. What's really cool about this is, even though, because again, I was, no matter what, the whole timeline, I was always like working on paintings, this series, blah, blah, blah. But you would be out there, so it's like I would take these breaks, so to speak, and like follow you in there. What are you doing? And then I loved being invited into your process because I was like, hey, like, what's up? Like, I want to build a chair. Yeah. And it was like, well, we know this woodworking thing because you had been doing it a while, and I knew your skill and all that. And I was like, hey, I have this idea. I love furniture. I have an obsession with chairs and design. And so we're like, okay, like you said, we had this anvil, so it's like, how can we work on our skills with metal but incorporate it into something? It's not like we had any intention to start making and selling furniture. It was really just for fun. Yeah,
and this is before we came together to make PL Smith. Like, this was just like we were doing our own things, and like I loved it because you would give me ideas. I would be like, how could we incorporate something with metal with this? And like you're talking about with the furniture, like the chair, and it was like making the little gussets and the little artistic pieces to go on it. That was like a reason for me to go and practice blacksmithing and get better at it. Once we had the anvil and I knew that's kind of like what I wanted to practice doing and get into, I did a lot of like research, watched a lot of YouTube videos on techniques, and because I never went to a class at that point other than the one experience I had with Brett McAfee at Jimmy's class, I was just like, all right, I'm going to figure this out. We got the anvil, we got a forge, we got some hammers that were just left in the house that we bought, and just started hitting metal. And when you had the idea, because I never knew what I was doing. It was like I needed
nobody ever does.
No, I'm saying like I needed a prompt to just do something, and you would come up with those prompts and we would work on it together. And that was so cool because that's like that transition period to PL Smith happening, because we would be out there in the shop just making fun things, and you're like, we need to, why don't we just come together, make an Instagram account and this business and do the stuff together.
And COVID hit. People were locked home, depressed. Speaking of prompts, I was like, Luke, one day, I was like, I have an idea.
I did not believe it. Or I was like, very skeptical, but.
It was like literally just the end of April. And I was like, thinking about a way to bring some positivity and motivation to people, because I was thinking about all the people that were probably makers and artists stuck at home, and like how to, bring that motivation and that drive. So I was like, what do you think about May for makers?
Yeah. And backing up even before that, like neither of us knew what a maker was. Like, you knew what a maker was.
No, I agree with you. But we didn't know anything. We were just winging it.
Yeah, when we went to maker camp, I felt like, oh, a maker is somebody that's on YouTube and doing this stuff. Like, I didn't feel like I could even say, oh, I'm a maker. But then as we started doing this stuff more, and you came up with that idea of May for Makers, it was like, all right, we're going to figure out, what a maker is and praise that, bring up the people that were in that position that we're in, like that didn't think that they were a maker, and say, you are, because you're creative and you come up with the ideas and you execute them.
So we came up with the prompts, which at that point, like you said, it was centered around makers, the idea, that word, that title. I didn't feel that way. I was kind of just like jumping on your boat, because I'm like, here I am, this like artist painter. So I remember needing you, obviously, and like thinking about these terms, how we can come up with it. And we did. It was successful. It was really fun. And we met a lot of cool people that year. And then that was a tough year, because toward the end, we kind of discovered like a lot of health issues that I was facing.
That was 2020.
At the very end. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
at
yeah,
the end.
that was
so
it.
It was like, it was tough. But we we kept it on the down low until 2021, where I had to have the surgery. And this surgery was because of endometriosis, which is a condition that affects 1%, 1 out of every 10 women. And so I had to have the surgery, and we had always talked about having kids. We wanted to have kids. And we were like, okay, we want to start trying, and so we discovered it. So anyways, we were still like, okay, Made for Makers was amazing. It was awesome. Like, I just want to add on to it. We met all high school people. We're like, we got to do this again. And we did. And that's when we started incorporating Maker Camp. We had such a blast, and it took off. We built this relationship with Austin. We wanted to incorporate him in. And it just so happened that May we fell pregnant, right? And we found out we were expecting. And again, there's another thing kind of kept on the down low. But what was cool about Made for Makers at this time is we were incorporating more and more to offer the community. Okay. Yeah. It was like a giveaway. We incorporated that. Remember the giveaway for the apron, bottle opener,
well, it was a Maker Camp
chance to get to the Maker Camp.
Yeah, but like again, backtracking on that, like when COVID hit, there was going to be Maker Camp 2020, and it got kind of at the last minute canceled. But it was still like kind of a hush hush. You can come to this if you're kind of local. Like the people that would come from wherever and have to fly, like they didn't go, but we went up there for that, and it was a smaller group of makers at this, and mainly all blacksmithing. And then Austin, I was talking to him, I was like, it'd be really cool if we had these, like, if there were these smaller group just forging things. And he was like, yeah, I've kind of been thinking about that too. And so then he started doing the hammer ends, and then that spring of 2021 is when we went to those and kind of fell more into that maker
metal.
Yeah, in the metalworking part of the maker community, but also like seeing more that this is a community, and that this is people that are all like-minded and come, just to learn and do things. And so that was kind of what led up to just figuring out what we wanted to do with it, I feel like, and that added to the Made for Makers. Like those events, the unofficial Maker Camp, where you set up the lives and you reached out to these people that were going to demonstrate, so that they could still demonstrate, but just through a live Instagram event.
Yeah, the virtual Instagram.
Yeah. So that was like, us, really you, reaching out to them, and them meaning people in the maker community. And so that's where we kind of talk more with Austin, and with your background in website development and like helping him out, kind of just spread the word, because Maker Camp at this point was like,
right.
What's that? Like, people knew about it the first year that happened. They saw it and it was coming up, and it didn't. So it's like Maker Camp was still very fresh, and that was a way that when I'm saying that was a way, I mean that going to those smaller events and becoming closer with Austin was the way to get in on Maker Camp, becoming kind of, an integral part of our business, who we were becoming and who we met, and
growing together, like
growing
also,
with the community.
And another highlight of 2021 is because of the success of Made for Makers in 2020. During my recovery from that surgery, I came up with the idea for And They Make, and because it was so amazing, and all the people we met, and the joy and positivity that it created and spread, I wanted it to be able to live year round. And that was really amazing, and then we launched it on the day of March 1st.
1 year after we started PLSMITHED.
And that was really great. So we found out we were pregnant in 2021. Our daughter Lily was born in 2022, January. And that was a crazy year, because we found out, before that I had started a new job. We had Lily, and then we were talking about, where are we going in the future? How are we going to decide to raise our child while living on Long Island? And it worked out in the end that we had decided we want to be closer to family. So we found out we were moving, and having a baby and moving in the same year was pretty crazy. But that's how we ended up here, where we are today in this house.
I mean, we wanted to be upstate. Fortunately, my job was like, it's okay if you transfer to the office up there. And, it was bittersweet moving, because we were leaving behind that shop where so many different things that had happened. Like, we worked so hard on building it out to be what it was, and we worked on projects and commissions and having fun together. And we were trying to find a place that had a, maybe not fresh starting point, but something that we could use as a shop.
Yeah, definitely.
And we found this place that had a garage, and we were like, okay, we can make that into that. And, it was difficult at the time when Lily was born to make and come up with an idea and execute it. Like, we kind of had to have...
Well, because first of all, the space was completely empty. We had to build it from the ground up when we got here. And I was transitioning from being a full-time art teacher to a stay-at-home mom.
But even before that, because we moved when Lily was 6 months old, and in that first 6 months, I mean, there was 2-3 months of packing to move. But when we were trying to be creative with things, we were parents of a very young child, and we couldn't just go be creative. So it kind of
well, it was pretty cool, because we built a pretty badass crib.
Oh yeah, I mean, we had fun projects like that, but that's what I'm saying is there had to be this job that you're working on for a client is due then, so you have to go do it.
Yeah.
Versus
making those
born,
fun, free.
Yeah, you just come up with the idea, an artistic thing. It's we couldn't do that as easily as we wanted to before we had Lily, but once we moved, it was this huge change of benefit too.
Yeah, because it was a fresh start. So it was almost how do we want to rebrand PL Smith? Kind of, it was okay. It started more of we're not just. That's also where we were kind of there. We were okay, what's a business versus content creation, because it kind of transferred. You know, we opened up as a business, and then COVID hit, and it's like, look, where are we now? I think that happened to a lot of people. And then you throw in having a kid, moving to a new place. We're in a whole new city, meeting new friends, establishing, you know, all that stuff. As anyone does, moving is not easy, and at the same time, you're trying to hold on to something that we started.
Yeah.
And so then...
Because, like, I feel like with, like, Instagram and, like, because we were kind of more pushed into content creation rather than the business, because the business side of it was working for clients and, like, building stuff for their shops.
Products, yeah.
Well, yeah, like, when we started, it was this person had a hair salon or a bar and they wanted this made. Those things kind of went like, those are not places you can go to. Yeah. Well, not even just up here, but like when COVID hit, you couldn't go to those, do those things. So they're not trying to put money into building those. So we didn't have commissioned or client work like that. So we were in that role of like, okay, we don't want to let this Instagram account, PLSMITHED, die. We need to create content for it, and Made for Makers is a huge thing, and that's content. So it was like we not fell off the wagon, but like it just became very difficult to have that time to make the content when Lily was born.
It was like a pivot where we had to renew ourselves.
Yes.
And a huge thing is, and I appreciate you and always supporting me, is not losing myself as an artist. Like, yes, I love making, and I consider myself a maker with you and in the community, but at the same time, you know, I still have my, you know, my love and passion for art. And up here, the art community is definitely, it's not the same, if not even existent. It's crazy.
Well, compared to Long Island and New York City, for sure.
So, and then so we moved here. And then in 2023, we, you know, it was like literally exactly around the same time that I had that surgery because of endometriosis. And we had to make a decision real quick. It was, do we want to, you know, expand our family? And we were really fortunate to be able to nip that in the butt real quick and like, look, okay, that is something we want to do. And so we moved forward and trying to, you know, have another kid, and we were really blessed because it came true quicker than we thought. And what was like kind of crazy about it is we were presented with the opportunity to attend a Workbench Con, and it was cool because we were like putting in the vibes out there that we wanted to grow as our, you know, our channel, PL Smith, and on top of Workbench Con, which was amazing, we were like, you know what, we really have something good going on here. So we reached out to other members of the community who introduced us to something called Make 48. And it was crazy because it was right before, you know, after we booked the tickets to take off, we found out, you know, we were going to have our second.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. And so that year, it was just wild. Here's another thing, talking about something amazing happening at the same time kind of slowed us down. During that pregnancy was a lot more difficult than with our first. The pregnancy was really difficult in that it physically slowed me down, and I feel that I contribute to the business in a certain way. So that's another thing that we learned over the years is what are our strengths? We have different skill sets, and that's what makes us, I think, stand out and work as a couple, a husband-wife duo who have a business together that, you know, it's not easy to do.
Definitely not.
But when I was slowed down by being pregnant, I wasn't able to contribute to things like Made for Makers that year and
as much. You still did, but
I did the best that I could, but definitely not the way that I wanted to. And so what was great, again, like I wasn't pregnant at Workbench Con, something that we always wanted to do, be a part of as we grew closer to members in the maker community. found out we were pregnant and attended May 48. That was awesome experience. And then I became more and more pregnant and just really tired. And it was hard. And at the same time, we're still moving into a new house.
Yeah,
so it's like,
I know.
okay,
That was not
we're
even a year.
still unpacking. That's what I mean. And so
Shop's
on top
not
of that,
set
you
up.
have our first kid and a new house. Now we're pregnant with our second. And, you know, what's next? It was like we really had to rethink it at the same time, accept that things weren't going to go exactly the way we'd imagined, but also you were working full time. The whole way that we got here is your job. You know, luckily your engineering position allowed you to transfer to Albany.
Yeah, because so we could be closer to family in the hopes that, hey, if we need some time, that they can come and help watch the kids, but also like have a closer relationship with them, because rather than being 6-7 hours away, they were only at 2. So it was definitely a year of like kind of dialed back on content creation, because like that's like we were saying, that's kind of like what PL Smith kind of was more in line with, rather than just a business and having a product that we're selling on Etsy. So it's like, all right, we can't create content because we haven't had the time or what we can do or the space. Like moving into the house, like we have a garage that has this, you know, just limitations for what we can do compared to what we had before. We lost, you know, tools that we had, and creating the shop and doing this the second time around, we kind of figured it out and made this space that we could make whatever we wanted really in the first one. But this one, it's like, okay, it's not set up. Tools are still in boxes. This is not going to work out. I got extension cords everywhere.
It was almost a blessing in disguise. It's like, but things started changing, you know, with everybody in society. People stopped wearing masks and were coming outside, and it's like we had to go with the flow, just like a lot of other people. Yeah,
but it was still slowed down in terms of like what we could produce. So we're always like, what can we make as content? Like we're not going to die. We need to stay relevant. Like I don't want PL Smith to just disappear, and people are like, what happened? Because, you know, we are very involved in the community in terms of Made for Makers and supporting people, and they make, you know, it just,
and showing up at Maker Camp, because
and the hammer-ins,
we started it to be demonstrators, which were contributing our skill set in that way to share new skills that we have developed and learned along the way to that point. So yeah, we have this crazy stuff going on and huge changes in our home life, but we still held on to that in those points where we're like, okay, this is really important to us, and how we were going to make it a priority along with all the other new things that came with parenthood and new second time homeowners.
Yeah, I mean, and before we dive into kind of when Porter was born, leading up to kind of really close to where we are now, because it's only been 2.5 months since she was born, like you touched on Workbench Con, you know, going to that, and within Workbench Con and Made for Makers, like that really helped PL Smith in terms of content creation, with working with brands and developing relationships with them, and understanding that, you know, you can make YouTube content and Instagram content and be paid for doing that stuff. YouTube paid for views, you know, by AdSense and all that.
Yeah, we learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, with learning about how you can use the content you're creating as marketing and advertising for brands really was a huge thing, because going forward in a business, like, yes, we're going to have products. We do have products. You know, if those don't take off and sell great, you still got to make your monthly income. If,
right,
you know,
and that's
we're trying to do that.
Like, I like how you were talking about before about like selling stuff on Etsy. It was like we have to find what works for us.
Yes.
And what direction were we really going in?
Yeah.
Because it was not realistic for us to pump out products as much as it was to document our process and share it and have those sponsors that we developed relationships with to, cheer us on.
Yeah. A lot of them that we met at WorkbenchCon and have met along the way, like took part in Made for Makers, where this past year of 2023, we were able to offer a giveaway item for every single day of the month.
Yeah, and it wasn't just helping PL Smith, it was our way of helping other people in the community.
Exactly. I mean, the small benefit for PL Smith was like getting your foot in the door with that company, that could work to something else. But it was a learning curve in all of this for figuring out how to create that content. Like if we're going to talk with a company and be like, hey, we want to advertise for you, we have to make the content. And the time to create the content was thin, because of family, work, everything going on outside of, the Instagram world. So going forward with all this,
we've basically, I feel like, done the best that we can. But
but
if you think about it, like all that happened in 1 year. And
really.
at the end of this past year, just a couple of months ago, like you said, we had our second daughter, Porter, but it wasn't smooth sailing like with Lily. We had a traumatic birth story, It ended up not just being, your typical scheduled C-section, but I had to have an emergency hysterectomy. This was like a whole different recovery process that the two of us were going through together. Like, holy shit, like what? And so here we are today doing, we've recovered, like I've recovered physically, we've recovered as a family, we're getting into the rhythm, finding what works for us. You're going back to work in a couple weeks, and that's going to be another thing we have to figure out.
Yeah.
But one thing we decided on before that is like, look, every year, I like to plan the year. We whip out the planner. We're like, what are our family goals? What are our business goals? And we're like, all right, we've got to either decide that it's going to be put to the side for a little bit, or we got to make it happen. And so we agreed on that. It was like, this is something that we want. This is something we're passionate about. We wanted to demonstrate that and model that for our daughters, and we can't give up. We made it this far, and we're going to do our best and move forward, and we've got some exciting things planned, like building out the art studio, continuing building the shop. Maybe we can, expand on content to the form of long format videos. Not just, doing our best to pump out some Instagram posts, but, how can we grow for ourselves, individuals, and, as our family, but also on our social media platforms.
Yeah. And
I think it's amazing how far we are gotten today based on everything that we went through. And I'm really looking forward to all the stuff that we have planned for this year. The things that we have put in specifically, like our goals that were set, that we're going to meet. We have these schedules, but also for all the cool things that might come up. Yeah. Because just like last year, WorkbenchCon was last minute. You never know what's going to happen this year. Yeah, we have like a wedding to go to. We have a couple things like our camping trip. But you know what? We've got cool things coming, and we'll be sharing them soon. Yeah,
you have a very detailed planner. You have always been the way that's planning it like this, and I've always been the way that's just like, all right, I'm just going to wing it and figure out what to do today. And I think that by working together, kind of combining that, like in terms of like not spontaneously just winging it, but just like, all right, we got to do this now this week, and you kind of planning out, it's really hopefully going to work into a way that can help us grow this business, because it is something. That's how it started? Yeah, and it's something that we enjoy doing together, and in that way we're working together, and we're yin and yang. Yeah, we're trying to figure this out, and hopefully this is the start to YouTube content that we want to do. We've always wanted to do it for years and years and years. It's just been a lot. It still is a lot right now with kids and taking care of that. And, we're working on it to get there. So
stay with us.
If any of you have watched it to this end, we really appreciate you. And we hope that you continue to follow our journey, because we still have a lot of good stuff to come. And I've heard it before from friends. We haven't even taken off yet with stuff. And to see where we are today and still believe that we haven't really launched, it's inspiring. And I think that the best is yet to come.